I walked into my husband's office holding lunch for us both. The door was slightly open, and laughter spilled out, his voice mixed with hers. I froze mid-step. Through the frosted glass, I saw his hand resting on her waist. Brianna, the assistant I'd personally recommended, he hired 6 months ago. My heart stopped, then started pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. He turned and looked directly at me. No shock. No guilt. Just cold annoyance. You shouldn't have come here, he said flatly. Brianna pulled away slowly, but she didn't look embarrassed. She looked irritated that I'd interrupted something. The lunch containers trembled in my hands. Turkey sandwiches from the deli he loved. Homemade cookies I'd baked that morning. I stood there like an idiot, unable to move or speak. The office felt like it was spinning. My husband of 7 years. The man I'd helped build from nothing. His hand on another woman's waist like it belonged there. Like I was the intruder in this moment. Finally, my legs remembered how to work. I turned and walked toward the elevator. Each step felt mechanical, like my body was moving without my permission. Inside me, something fundamental was breaking. But something else was hardening too. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was war. By the next morning, everyone knew. Brianna posted a photo on social media, her and my husband at dinner, tagged New Beginnings. The comments were filled with heart emojis and congratulations. My phone exploded with messages. Coworkers offering pity. Former friends asking if I was okay. Some people just sent sad face emojis like that meant something. He moved out within 3 days. Packed his clothes while I was at my mother's house. Left a note on the kitchen counter. We've grown apart naturally. I need space to figure things out. Grown apart naturally. Like this was some mutual, peaceful decision. Like I hadn't just caught him with his hands on another woman. Within a week, HR called. My consulting contract with his company was being suspended pending review of potential conflicts of interest. I'd worked there for 4 years. Built client relationships. Designed half their processes. Now I was suddenly a conflict of interest. They erased me from his life and my career in one calculated move. I sat in our apartment, my apartment now, staring at the empty closet space where his clothes used to hang. The silence was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to break things. Instead, I just sat there, numb and hollow. He controlled the narrative perfectly. Within 2 weeks, mutual friends started treating me differently. At a coffee shop, I overheard 2 people we'd known for years. She was always so focused on work, one said. Never made time for him. Too controlling, the other agreed. Brianna helped him rediscover himself. I wanted to throw my coffee at them. Instead, I left quietly, hands shaking. The lies spread like poison. I was cold, demanding, career-obsessed. Never there for him emotionally. Never mind that I'd supported him through grad school. Never mind that I'd helped him start his company when no one else believed in him. Never mind that I'd sacrificed my own career opportunities to be his partner. None of that mattered now. He'd rewritten our entire history, and people believed him. Brianna became the sympathetic figure. The woman who'd shown him what real partnership looked like. I started avoiding industry events. Every time I showed up, conversations would stop. People would look at me with judgment. At one networking dinner, a woman I barely knew touched my arm and said, "You know, men need to feel appreciated." Like this was my fault. Like I'd driven him into another woman's arms through my own failures. I left early, drove home, and cried until my throat hurt. That night, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m, I made a decision. If he wanted to rewrite our story, fine. But I'd write the ending, and it would be one he'd never forget. I moved into a studio apartment across town. Small. Cheap. Nothing like the place we'd shared. I couldn't afford anything better after losing my consulting income. The walls were thin. I could hear my neighbors arguing at night. Could hear footsteps above me at all hours. My furniture was mismatched, pieces from thrift stores and things my mother donated. Sleep became impossible. Every night, I replayed that scene in his office. His hand on her waist. Her smug expression when she saw me. His cold voice saying I shouldn't have come. The images looped endlessly in my mind. I'd wake up at 2 a.m, heart racing, sheets soaked with sweat. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like a stranger. I'd lost weight without trying. My cheekbones were too sharp. My eyes had permanent dark shadows underneath. My hair hung limp and dull. I looked exactly how I felt. Broken. Humiliated. Defeated. But underneath all that pain and exhaustion, something else was growing. Something quiet and fierce. A vow forming in the darkness. This wouldn't be my ending. I wouldn't let him win. 7 years of my life. 7 years of building his dreams alongside him. He thought he could throw me away and move on without consequences. He was wrong. I didn't know how yet, but I'd make him regret ever underestimating me. One afternoon, I sat in a coffee shop trying to update my resume. At the next table, 2 young guys in expensive suits were talking loudly. I recognized them, junior executives from his company. "The Warren Project is a disaster," one said. "Deadlines keep getting missed. Budget's completely blown," the other added. "And client satisfaction scores are tanking." I kept my eyes on my laptop, but I was listening to every word. They mentioned 3 projects I'd personally managed before being pushed out. All falling apart now. "It wasn't like this before," one of them said. "Remember when everything actually ran smoothly?" His friend laughed bitterly. "Yeah, back when his ex-wife was around. She actually knew what she was doing." The words hit me like electricity. Without me, his company was rotting from the inside. I'd been the one managing those client relationships, the one keeping budgets organized and projects on track. He'd taken credit for all of it, basked in the praise while I did the actual work. And now, without me, the cracks were showing. Everything was falling apart. I closed my laptop and sat back, mind racing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about something bigger. Redemption. Reclamation. Proof. I went home and started making lists. His company's weaknesses. Connections I still had in the industry. Skills I'd developed over the years. By midnight, I had the outline of a plan. It would take time, patience, strategy. But I could do this. I would do this. I spent 3 weeks completely rebranding myself. Updated my resume, highlighting every achievement I'd accomplished. Started a new consulting firm under my maiden name, Sterling Solutions. The name felt powerful, clean, unconnected to him and our failed marriage. I cut my hair into a sharp, professional bob. Traded my soft cardigans for tailored blazers. Bought 3 power suits in bold colors, deep red, navy blue, charcoal gray. When I looked in the mirror now, I saw someone different. Someone stronger. My first client was a small firm struggling to compete with his company. They needed help with operations and client management. I knew exactly what to do. Within 3 weeks, I'd helped them secure a major contract that his company had been pursuing. The client chose them over him. The victory felt electric. For the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. My client was thrilled. "You're incredible," he said. "How did you know exactly what we needed?" I didn't tell him the truth. That I'd helped build the company he'd been competing against. That I knew every weakness, every operational flaw, every client complaint. I just smiled and said, "Experience." But inside, I was glowing. This was just the beginning. I'd found my weapon. Knowledge. And I had more of it than anyone realized. Word spread through the industry faster than I expected. A new consultant who could turn companies around overnight. No one connected me to my ex-husband. I'd changed my appearance. Used my maiden name. Worked through referrals and professional networks. I was careful about which clients I accepted. Companies that competed with his. Firms in adjacent markets. Businesses that could benefit from knowing his weaknesses. I documented everything obsessively. His company's patterns. Leadership failures. Client complaints. Operational inefficiencies. Every piece of information was another chess piece I was placing on the board. I attended industry conferences where he spoke. Sat in the back, wearing sunglasses, watching him stumble through presentations. Presentations I used to write for him. Without me, he was forgettable. Average. Dependent on Brianna, who clearly lacked the skills to truly support him. She looked good standing next to him for photos, but she couldn't do the actual work. 3 months after the divorce finalized, I'd tripled my client base. 6 months later, I had a waiting list of companies wanting to work with Sterling Solutions. I was building something real. A reputation based on actual competence and results. Not stolen credit. Not office affairs. Just solid, strategic work that produced outcomes. Every success felt like another step up a ladder. And every step took me closer to him. To the moment when I'd be strong enough to take everything. My ex-husband and Brianna got married within 8 months. A small ceremony. Just close friends and family. The photos appeared on social media. Her in a white dress, him in a navy suit, both smiling like they'd won something. A business magazine featured them shortly after. The dynamic duo. How a power couple is redefining tech innovation. I read the article 3 times, studying every word. They posed together in his office. Talked about building success through authentic partnership. The irony made me want to scream. Partnership. the concept he'd destroyed in our marriage. But I stayed calm, used the anger as fuel instead of letting it consume me. I watched every interview they gave, studied their body language, noticed small things. The way her smile never quite reached her eyes. The way he touched her shoulder a bit too forcefully during photos. The slight tension when they disagreed on camera. Behind the perfect facade, cracks were forming. Their empire was trembling. I could see it in the strained laughter, the forced enthusiasm, the way he'd stumble over questions about company performance. During one panel discussion, a journalist asked about recent client losses. He deflected awkwardly, blamed market conditions. But I knew the truth. His company was struggling. Through a client connection, I met Victoria Huang. She was a major investor with holdings in multiple tech companies, including his. We met for coffee to discuss a potential consulting project. She was sharp, direct, no nonsense. I liked her immediately. "I've heard impressive things about your work," she said. Over the next few weeks, we met regularly. I consulted on several of her investments, improved efficiency, strengthened operations, built trust. Eventually, she started confiding concerns about various companies in her portfolio, including his. "Something feels unstable there," she said one afternoon. "Quarterly reports are sloppy. Financial controls seem weak. Client satisfaction is dropping." She looked at me directly. "You understand operations better than anyone I've worked with. What do you think?" I chose my words carefully, asked strategic questions, planted subtle seeds of doubt. Nothing obvious, nothing that seemed manipulative, just thoughtful observations that made her think. "Financial sloppiness often indicates deeper problems," I said. "Weak controls suggest poor leadership oversight." She nodded, making notes. I could see her trust in me growing. This was my entry point, the first domino starting to wobble. I just needed patience. Patience and perfect timing. 6 months later, Victoria invited me to an exclusive business dinner. High-level investors and executives. The kind of event I used to attend with my ex-husband. My stomach knotted when I saw his name on the guest list. But I went anyway. Wore my red power suit. Hair perfect. Makeup flawless. Confidence radiating from every pore. When I walked into the room, conversations paused. Eyes tracked me. Some people recognized me. Others didn't. My ex-husband was there with Brianna. They stood near the bar, his hand on her lower back. When someone introduced me as the founder of Sterling Solutions, his face drained of color. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. His mouth opened slightly. Closed. Opened again. No words came out. Brianna's smile froze. Her eyes went wide. They'd thought I'd disappeared, faded away into obscurity. Instead, I'd transformed into someone they couldn't ignore. Someone successful, powerful, undeniable. "Long time no see," I said, extending my hand for a professional handshake. My voice was calm, steady. He took my hand awkwardly. His palm was sweaty. "You look different," he managed. I smiled. "I am different." Throughout dinner, I felt their anxiety radiating from across the table. They kept glancing at me, whispering to each other. I ate my meal calmly, engaged in professional conversation, acted like they didn't exist. It was the best performance of my life.
After dinner, I stood near the bar overhearing conversations. 2 executives from his company were talking nearby, unaware I was listening. "Morale is terrible," one said. "And Brianna keeps pushing these cost-cutting measures that just damage quality," the other added. "She doesn't understand how operations actually work." I sipped my wine, committing every word to memory. "Remember when his ex-wife ran operations?" the first one said. "Everything actually functioned back then." "Yeah, but we're not supposed to mention her," his colleague replied quietly. The irony was delicious. Brianna had been hired for her looks and her willingness to agree with everything he said, not for actual competence. Now she was dragging down a company she didn't understand. My ex-husband was too proud to admit he needed help, too arrogant to recognize his own limitations. The same employees who'd watched my humiliation were now suffering under incompetent leadership. I felt no sympathy for him, but I felt something for those employees. They deserved better, and maybe eventually I could give them that, when the timing was right. Victoria approached me as the event was ending. "Walk with me," she said. Outside, she lit a cigarette and looked at me directly. "You used to be married to him, didn't you?" He nodded. No point denying it. And he's a fool, she said flatly. Smiled. Yes, he is. Within 2 months, a major project collapsed publicly. A key client pulled their contract, citing unreliable deliverables and consistent communication failures. The news spread through industry channels immediately. His company's stock price dipped. Business publications questioned their stability. Social media buzzed with speculation. My ex-husband tried damage control, gave interviews blaming his team, talked about restructuring for future success. But everyone could see through it. Brianna made things worse with a tone-deaf post about clearing out old management habits. The backlash was immediate and harsh. I watched it all from my office. Not as a scorned ex-wife. As a strategist who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Victoria called me that afternoon. You were right, she said. The instability is worse than I thought. I'm seriously considering pulling my investment. I didn't push. Just listened sympathetically. That's a difficult position, I said carefully. Whatever you decide, I'm available to consult on alternative strategies. She thanked me and hung up. I sat back in my chair, allowing myself a small smile. The dominoes were falling. Momentum was building. Everything was going according to plan. I just needed to be patient a little longer. And patience was something I'd learned very well over the past 2 years. Victoria called 2 weeks later. I need you to do something for me, she said. Before I make any final decisions about my investment, I want a complete audit. Operations, finances, leadership effectiveness. Everything. My heart raced, but I kept my voice professional. That's a significant undertaking. I'll pay you very well, she said. And I trust your discretion more than anyone else's. The poetic irony almost made me laugh out loud. They wanted me to audit the company I'd helped build. The company that had erased me. The company that had cost me my marriage and my career. I'll need full access, I said. Financial records, operational data, employee interviews. You'll have complete access, Victoria confirmed. Whatever you need. I accepted with calm professionalism. Inside I was screaming with satisfaction. This was it. The opening I'd been engineering for months. I'd have access to everything. Every secret. Every weakness. Every failure. Everything I needed to see exactly how deep the rot went. And everything I needed to eventually take control. I started preparing immediately. This audit would be thorough. Devastating. And absolutely undeniable. They'd handed me the keys to their kingdom. And they had no idea what I was about to do with them. 2 weeks later I walked back into that building. The same lobby where I'd fled in tears. The same elevator I'd ridden while my world collapsed. But everything felt different now. I wore my navy suit. Carried a professional briefcase. My heels clicked confidently on the marble floor. People whispered as I passed. Some recognized me. Others just knew something significant was happening. Brianna met me in the conference room. She tried to act cordial, but her hands were shaking. So nice to see you in a professional capacity, she said, voice thin. I smiled politely. Let's keep this focused on the audit. My ex-husband avoided me completely the first day. Stayed in his office with the door closed. But I didn't need to see him. I had access to everything that mattered. Financial records, client files, employee feedback forms, operational procedures. I documented everything methodically. Wasteful spending, inflated expense reports, reckless decisions, poor communication systems. Every piece of evidence was another nail in their coffin. During confidential employee interviews, people opened up. They were frustrated, overworked, underpaid, undervalued. It wasn't like this before, one longtime employee said, tears in her eyes. When you were here, things ran smoothly. We felt valued. Took careful notes. By the end of week 1, I had enough material to write a damning report. But I waited. Thoroughness was important, and I wanted to find every single problem. During week 2, I found something significant. Hidden in their quarterly financial reports was creative accounting. Nothing explicitly illegal but deeply unethical. They'd been shifting expenses between quarters to hide losses, inflating projected revenue to mislead investors. It was subtle. Most auditors would miss it. But I'd helped design their accounting systems. I knew exactly where to look. I documented everything meticulously. Screenshots, spreadsheets, comparative analyses. Every finding backed by undeniable evidence. When I finished the audit, my report was 53 pages. Comprehensive. Fleming. Impossible to dispute. I scheduled the exit interview for a Friday afternoon. My ex-husband and Brianna sat across the conference table. He looked tired, older. Brianna looked nervous. I presented my findings calmly, professionally, laid out every problem systematically. Wasteful spending, poor leadership decisions, declining employee morale, unethical accounting practices. His face went pale. Brianna's hand gripped the table. Some of these findings are exaggerated, he tried. I slid additional documentation across the table. Everything here is verifiable. His jaw clenched. Brianna looked like she might cry. I gathered my materials and stood. Thank you for your cooperation, I said. Professional. Completely in control. I walked out of that building feeling lighter than I had in years. Victory tasted incredibly sweet. The report landed on Victoria's desk Monday morning. She shared it with other major investors by afternoon. Panic spread through the company like wildfire. Emergency board meetings, frantic phone calls, desperate damage control attempts. My ex-husband faced the press looking sweaty and defensive, tried to explain away the findings, blamed external factors, market conditions, competitive pressures. But the evidence was too strong, too well documented. Brianna disappeared from the office for a week. People said she was dealing with health issues. The truth was simpler. She couldn't face the consequences of her incompetence. Victoria called me the day after the report circulated. This is worse than I imagined, she said. We need someone to stabilize operations immediately. Someone who actually knows what they're doing. She paused deliberately. Would you consider a temporary consulting role? Chief Operations Consultant. I pretended to think about it. Given my history with the company, that might be complicated. You're the only person I trust to fix this disaster, she said. Name your price. I named a substantial figure. 6 figures for 6 months. She agreed without hesitation. Within 48 hours, contracts were signed. I was officially back inside. With power this time. With authority. With the ability to make real changes. But I wasn't planning to stay temporary. This was just phase 2. The real takeover was still coming. I brought in my own team within days. People I'd worked with before. People loyal to me. We restructured key departments. Fixed communication breakdowns. Restored client relationships. Improved employee morale. The company started functioning properly again. People seemed relieved, grateful, hopeful. But while I was legitimately improving operations, I was also doing something else. Something nobody noticed. I'd established a shell company months earlier. Used it to quietly purchase shares of his company. The stock price was low after the scandal. Perfect buying opportunity. I bought small amounts at first. Nothing that triggered regulatory attention. But consistently, strategically, 5%, then 8%, then 12%. Within 3 months, I owned 15%. Within 6 months, 23%. Getting closer to controlling interest with every purchase. Nobody noticed. They were too busy being grateful I'd saved them. My ex-husband actually thanked me once. I appreciate what you're doing here, he said awkwardly in the hallway. I smiled professionally. Just doing my job. He had no idea. No idea that every day he spent feeling relieved was another day I got closer to taking everything from him. Victoria knew, of course. She was helping facilitate some of the purchases. "You're brilliant," she said during one of our private meetings. "Absolutely brilliant." 6 months into my consulting role, rumors began. Industry gossip about a mystery investor quietly accumulating shares, planning a takeover. The board scrambled to identify who. My ex-husband looked terrified during meetings. His company was his entire identity. The thought of losing it was destroying him. Brianna suggested they fight back somehow, buy shares themselves, but he couldn't afford it. His personal finances were stretched thin from failed projects and expensive lifestyle choices. During one board meeting, I watched him unravel, his confidence evaporating, his arrogance crumbling. The man who'd once told me I shouldn't have come to his office now looked small and powerless. Victoria asked me privately, "Do you know who's buying?" I shook my head, maintaining the performance. "No idea. But whoever it is clearly sees value in what we're rebuilding." She smiled slightly. We both knew the truth. Meanwhile, I continued buying shares. 30%, 35%, 40%. So close now. I could almost taste complete victory. At night, I'd sit in my apartment. Much nicer now, I'd moved into a beautiful place downtown, and review the numbers. Calculate how much more I needed. How close I was to controlling interest. Part of me almost felt sorry for him. But then I'd remember his hand on Brianna's waist. His cold dismissal. The way he'd erased me from our shared history. And any sympathy vanished instantly. The reveal happened at a scheduled board meeting. Normal agenda. Quarterly review. Strategic planning. But Victoria had added one item at the end. Special announcement. The room filled with board members, executives, key investors. My ex-husband sat near the head of the table. Brianna beside him, holding his hand. They looked nervous but unaware of what was coming. Victoria stood. "We've identified the mystery investor," she announced. "They've agreed to reveal themselves today." The room went completely silent. My ex-husband's face drained of color. Brianna gripped his arm tightly. Victoria looked directly at me. "Would you like to explain?" I stood slowly. "Only." Every eye turned toward me. "The mystery investor is me," I said clearly. "I currently hold 42% of company shares. Combined with Victoria's 15% proxy voting agreement, I control 57% of this company." The room exploded. Shocked murmurs. My ex-husband looked like he'd been physically struck. His mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Brianna's hand slipped from his arm. She stared at me with pure horror. "You," he finally whispered. His voice cracked. He nodded. "Me. The woman you underestimated. The woman who built this company before you tried to destroy her." Victoria smiled. She'd known for weeks. We'd choreographed this reveal perfectly. "I motion for a vote on new leadership," she said. The vote was swift. My majority ownership made it inevitable. New CEO. Complete operational control. Total authority. He was forced to resign immediately. Effective today. Security would escort him out. Brianna tried pleading. "I can still contribute." "I can." I looked at her coldly. "You already contributed. Just not in the way you imagined." Security escorted them both from the building. I watched them leave. Watched him look back one final time at the company he'd lost. Then the doors closed. And it was mine. I moved into the CEO office that same afternoon. The same space where I'd caught them together 2 years earlier. I had it completely gutted and redecorated within a week. New furniture. New colors. New energy. Every trace of him erased. My first action was addressing the entire staff. I called a company-wide meeting. Over 200 people gathered in the main hall. "I know the past few years have been difficult," I began. "But we're rebuilding this company on integrity and real competence. No more politics. No more favoritism. Just good work and fair treatment." The applause was thunderous. People stood. Several employees had tears in their eyes. I promoted 3 people who'd been overlooked under the previous leadership, restructured compensation to be more equitable, implemented transparent communication policies. Within 2 weeks, the entire atmosphere transformed. People smiled in the hallways. Productivity increased. Client satisfaction scores rose dramatically. The company started genuinely thriving. News broke quickly across industry channels. CEO ousted by ex-wife in stunning corporate takeover. The story went viral. Business journals featured it. Social media exploded with commentary. Women from around the world reached out, sharing their own stories, thanking me, saying I'd inspired them. "You showed me I didn't have to accept being discarded," one message said. Another, "You proved that revenge is a dish best served successful." My silence during those months of humiliation now felt like strategic genius. I'd let my work speak louder than any words could have. My ex-husband tried starting a new company within 6 months. Nobody would invest. His reputation was thoroughly damaged. The audit findings had made him radioactive in business circles. Banks wouldn't loan him money. Former colleagues wouldn't return calls. Angel's investors politely declined meetings. He'd burned every bridge. Brianna left him within a year. I heard through mutual contacts that she'd simply moved on. She'd married him for status and success. Without those things, she had no interest in staying. The fairy tale had collapsed. He moved to a different city eventually. Took a mid-level management position at someone else's company. Started over from scratch. The mighty had fallen incredibly hard. I felt no satisfaction in his suffering. No joy in his downfall. Just cold acknowledgement that consequences existed. They tried building something on betrayal and stolen credit. Crumbled exactly as it should have. Meanwhile, my company thrived. Stock prices rising steadily. Client base expanding. New contracts. Industry recognition. Within 18 months, we doubled in value. I'd taken something broken and made it stronger than it ever was. That was the real victory. Not his downfall. My rise. Proving that competence and integrity built something lasting. That shortcuts might work temporarily, but real skill endured. That I was never the problem. He was. One evening I stayed late at the office. Sat at my desk looking out over the city lights. The building was quiet. Just security guards and a few people working late. I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal. The humiliation. The slow, strategic climb back to power. My reflection in the window glass looked calm, collected, powerful. Nothing like the broken woman who'd fled this building 2 years earlier. I realized something important in that moment. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. I'd taken back what was always partially mine. The work I'd contributed. The value I'd created. The respect I'd earned. He tried to erase me from the story. Instead, I'd become the author. The company was better now under my leadership. Employees were happier and more productive. Clients were satisfied. Operations ran efficiently. I'd proven that success built on integrity lasted longer than success built on betrayal. My phone buzzed. "Victoria. Dinner to celebrate," the text read. I smiled and replied yes. Gathered my things and left the office. Stepped out into the cool evening air feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of humiliation finally gone. Replaced by something infinitely better. Pride. Is power earned through perseverance and strategy. One. Not by destroying him, though that happened anyway. But by becoming the person he could never be. Competent. Fickle. Worthy of the position I now held. I held a company-wide meeting the following month. Something I'd been planning carefully. I stood at the front of the room, every employee watching. "I want to talk about how we build our future together," I began. This company went through a difficult period. Poor leadership. Bad decisions. People feeling undervalued. I paused, looking around the room. Making eye contact. "But we're stronger now. We've proven that integrity matters. That competence matters. That treating people with respect creates better outcomes than politics and favoritism. The room was completely silent, everyone listening. So here's my promise to you, I continued. Build your careers here with integrity. Do good work. Treat each other well. Because shortcuts might win you moments, but honesty and skill win you legacies. The applause started slow, then built. People stood. Several employees were crying. After the meeting, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 25, working in the marketing department. Madam Edith, you inspired me, she said, voice shaking. I was in a toxic relationship. Watching your story gave me courage to leave. I moved out last week. Hugged her. You deserve better, I said. Always remember that. Never let anyone make you feel small. These moments mattered more than the corporate victory. More than the takeover or the revenge. This was about showing people that you could rise from betrayal. That ending wasn't the same as defeated. That you could reclaim your power and build something meaningful. For the first time I felt complete peace. Not just satisfaction. True peace. 3 months later, a letter arrived at my office. Hand-delivered by courier. I recognized the handwriting on the envelope immediately. I stared at it for several minutes, debating whether to open it or not. Finally, curiosity won. Inside was a handwritten letter. 2 pages. His handwriting was messier than I remembered. Less confident. He took responsibility for everything. Admitted he'd been selfish and cruel. Said I deserved better than how he'd treated me. Apologized for the lies he'd spread. For destroying my career. For the humiliation. No excuses. No justifications. Just raw, honest remorse. He said he hoped I was happy now. That I deserved every bit of success I'd achieved. That watching me rise had taught him what real strength looked like. The letter ended simply. I'm sorry, Edith. You were always the stronger one. I read it 3 times. No anger. No satisfaction. I considered responding. Drafted several versions over the following days. But ultimately decided silence was the better answer. He didn't deserve my words. My time. My emotional energy. I placed the letter in a drawer and returned to work. That afternoon I signed a major new contract. Hired 30 employees. Approved raises for 2 departments. Real work. Real progress. Real legacy being built. That mattered infinitely more than any apology letter. He was my past. A painful chapter now closed. This company, these employees, this future, that was what mattered now. A year after taking full control, I stood on stage accepting an award. Innovative Leader of the Year. The auditorium was packed with industry professionals. Victoria sat in the front row, beaming with pride. My team filled several rows behind her, cheering loudly. During my acceptance speech, I talked about resilience, about transformation, about refusing to let failure define you. Success isn't avoiding betrayal or pain, I said. It's refusing to let those things stop you. It's using them as fuel instead of letting them become anchors. I didn't mention him by name. Didn't need to. Everyone in that room knew my story. Knew what I'd overcome. Knew what this award really represented. After the ceremony, reporters crowded around. One asked, "How does it feel, owning the company that once pushed you out?" I smiled calmly. It feels like justice. Like proving that competence and integrity matter more than politics and betrayal.